Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Loochador Podcast. Billy Liucci, David Nuño. This presentation is brought to you by our good friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors, where they carry all the best gear from the top brands, all at the best prices you'll love. And now shopping is more convenient than ever at Academy.com and the Academy app. Enjoy free shipping on orders of $25 or more with a sign-in, plus easy in-store curbside pickup. Shop anytime, anywhere, and find your widest selection of colors, styles, and sizes, from grills to fitness equipment to workout clothes. Everything you need to have fun out there is right there at Academy.com.
I'm a grill market. Maybe I'll go do curbside. Have them bring me a grill.
Buddy, last week we did a season preview. And I think we thought that it would be a good time to kind of just get game week ready. On Monday we'll start talking about New Mexico, and we can do a little bit of that here. But just kind of going through positions and seeing how things may shake out, your thoughts, my thoughts, and kind of just get everybody ready for it.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of people noticed on the board. They were asking, well, I thought there was going to be a follow-up with the defense when I wrote that long offensive thing, and I guess I might try to write some, but really what I would tell them as we sit here today is this is the defense. We talked about it a lot in the season preview, and there's a lot in there that'll tell you what is exactly what was going to be written. If you go back and watch when we talk about the season preview, there's a ton in there about things from camp on the defense. So for those, there's a couple people that go, Jimbo's had it airtight. We've had a ton of fall camp intel coming out here. I just hadn't put it all down in writing other than that long form offense one. We talked about it for about 45 minutes the other day, and there's a lot of intel if you listen to what or read, because it's transcribed, what actually has been going on out at practice. And you listen to this today and you'll glean a lot more from it as we go. So yeah, that depth chart, it's game week. We'll talk a ton about A&M New Mexico starting tomorrow. Jimbo's presser tomorrow. They'll probably hand out one of those depth charts with 76 oars on it. You'll think you're on like a college rowing team or something.
I know a media
Texas
member
win
too.
A bunch of national titles in rowing. That's part of that Director's Cup. They beat their chest over. But yeah, there'll be enough oars that you can row a boat with. What were you going to say?
There's a couple of media members that may scoff at the depth chart.
I mean, people in the media that cry about, and it might, does Owen do that?
I didn't say that.
Okay, I didn't know if he did or not. But people that cry about the depth chart, I just say, welcome to 2016, 2012.
In every sport.
Or, please don't transfer, or please don't get discouraged, you're a freshman, or I don't need to tell the media what they don't need to know, or trying to keep secrets from the other team even though it's really not a big deal, or that's been going on forever. But let's talk today for a few minutes, just kind of how we see things maybe playing out, just based on everything I've heard throughout August and seen, heard, a wide variety of sources. You guys, I don't need to say where, just kind of going through and trying to figure out, patch it together as best we can. We'll be wrong about some of this, but I think you'll get the best insight that you're going to get anywhere from this conversation right here into how things might look. Particularly, we're talking about this weekend, maybe, even Miami. I do think you'll see a lot of shakeout, between this weekend and Miami, but especially pre-Auburn, when you have two kind of, obviously less taxing games with a big one in between.
So you've said it. You've said your opinion from the beginning, but let's start at quarterback. And we know how you think it's going to shake out, but it's game week. Here we go.
Yeah, I still think, David, that same thing I've thought all along. I think you'll see Wigman go out there and be your starting QB against the Lobos this weekend. I think that's been – and nothing's official. Again, this is me talking. Now, by tomorrow, probably in the mock game yesterday, I think everyone on that team could tell who would be getting the lion's share of the first team reps, because it's that time.
Yep.
It's when you have to start doing that. So I think you'll see Connor as QB1, just kind of the same way the season finished, is how you'll see it start. With Max Johnson absolutely ready to roll. And again, that ain't official. This is me talking how I think things are going to play out. And I've always kind of thought that. People had been like, don't know, like, Jimbo doesn't have to name a starter. I know people want, and then there are some people that I heard McGee come on here and it concerned him that he hadn't. I don't think that's a concern at all. I just think a college coach is going to kind of either go one way or the other. Either you call it really early or you let it ride and then it starts to work itself out. But you don't, the longer you can go without sitting there in front of a podium and telling everyone, the easier it is. Yeah. And I think if he doesn't have to say, if he can make it through tomorrow without saying anything, he probably will. So we'll see. Tomorrow's presser will be interesting, and I haven't heard one way or the other if there's going to be any sort of formal announcement or not.
I could see him saying
it. That's what I think is going to happen, but that's not even a.
I could see him saying like it's it's going to be so and so, and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Backfield, interesting because all three of those guys I expect to get a look.
Oh yeah. For sure.
Is there a depth chart per se going into the first game, you think?
And I also think you've got a couple guys we don't talk about enough, those bigger backs that are going to play as well, which I've been mentioning a lot. I see some other people started to kind of wake up to that. I think they read our reports or read my – but Bailey is a guy in particular, Dave Bailey from Boston College and Colorado State, almost 2,500 career rushing yards. And gives a dimension that they really don't have at 235 pounds. And he's had some nice practices. He had a good scrimmage last weekend. The guy who also had a really good scrimmage was Amari Daniels. Had a really nice scrimmage, and he popped. He flashed a lot because he's the most experienced. I would bet he'd probably be on the field on their first offensive snap. But again, I think you're going to see all those guys get carries, and it's going to be kind of an in-game thing, I believe. And then I think as the season goes on, it'll be, cumulative of how they're playing.
Yeah.
And do I think it'll change every week? No, you'll see guys. There's an opportunity for somebody to seize it and just say, hey, this guy, we're going to give it to him 18, 22 times a game. I don't think we'll get there anytime soon because I think all three of those guys are so talented. You'll see them rotating, and then it's usually going to be the healthiest guy. Maybe he'll be playing more, and you'll see it. And I think Reuben Owens is one that as the year goes on, you'll see more and more out of him.
Wide receiver, I feel like it is what it is. Like we know the 3 or 4. To me, it would depend, and maybe that's not fair for Jahdae Walker, but
it's not. But you're not trying to be unfair. I'm not saying it's unfair. I think I would say it's 5.
So it depends on what they go out there with.
I think. Well, I think you know what Anias is. You know what his role is. Evan, I think, is on the verge of SEC stardom. And if this offense goes right, and if the QB can get protection and time to throw, I think he could be break out on the national stage this year.
Right.
We know all the talk about Noah Thomas and what he's done, and we know what Moose Muhammad does in football games. It's like every time the dude gets targeted, he makes plays. And sometimes spectacular ones. Same with Evan. Same with Noah all the time in practice. And by the way, same with Jahdae Walker. So I think those guys, beyond that, there's a true freshman in Micah Tease that I think you'll see from time to time, especially in these September games. Again, I think you'll even see some of those true freshmen. Micah Tease in particular, I think you could see him as early as this weekend. Hopefully, if the game goes a certain way. But he's a guy that's impressed. And then Cottrell, and one guy I think is a really interesting one to keep an eye on is another portal transfer. Had a couple big catches in the scrimmage because he is the fastest wide receiver on that roster. Is Jordan Anthony, the Kentucky wide receiver. So don't be surprised if every once in a while you see him roll in there and get behind the defense, and you see that ball go up deep. By the way, one thing Max Johnson throws an absolutely beautiful deep ball, and Connor is getting better and better at it too the more they throw it. And another thing about receiver I wanted to say, true freshman Marcel Reed makes plays. And I had somebody yesterday that was out there that said, man, this dude running the scout team offense against the number 1 defense, he's slippery, like mobile as a runner. and he can throw it too. And like I've said before, one of the brightest dudes in that class. Just really high IQ, high football IQ. One of the more interesting guys that I don't think, in a perfect world, you don't talk about a lot this year, but just one of those signings to kind of say, remember when they went and got that quarterback out of Tennessee?
Right.
Just he's impressed early.
O-line, do you think, is it kind of like in September we'll see a building? Certain guys will start game 1, game 2, maybe a little bit more of the stars, or
You don't want that.
Right.
Father, he's been hurt. He's on schedule, but that schedule is going to be right around now. So his recovery's been good, but he missed a lot of time, and he's still, he's coming back from a knee, end of spring knee surgery. And then you have Bryce. Bryce has missed a lot of practice. Meanwhile, when he misses practice, you've got Naboo in there, you got Remington Strickland, and they're doing a good job. Naboo in particular is a guy that if you had to start there, you start him. But it's interesting what's been going on lately, and you never read too much into it because there's always moving around, but there's been times where your two first team tackles have been Crownover and Basantis, which that could be the case Saturday. I don't think, because I think Zune ends up being it, but there's also been times where Basantis has been at guard alongside Zune when Naboo's at center. And wouldn't even be out of the question as Naboo, Basantis, and Zune. But you got Dewberry at left guard, and he's a returning starter and did a nice job last year. But you've also got Naboo, who could absolutely start at guard, and you've got a senior in Layden. So that battle, I think, will be interesting to watch in the first month or so, is who's starting at left guard spot between Dewberry and Naboo. And I think they'll both play, and then who's putting out the better tape when they go back and evaluate. So I think that one will be interesting. Again, Mark is could probably step in for any of your 3 interior spots if need be. The tackle thing's interesting. If Fothery's not 100% ready to go Saturday, then you probably see Crownover at that right tackle spot. And then Basantis can really play either with Zune. So the depth chart's crazy. I just explained why. The only, to me, 1,000% stable spot is Layden. I'm talking about for right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, first game.
Is Layden at right guard. Now, I think your optimal, it involves Bryce Foster at center. I think we all know that. Like a healthy in there Bryce Foster. And then that gives you all kinds of depth at the guard spots with, and it's particularly because of Naboo, but you've also got Moko, you've got Aki. Aki can play guard or tackle. You've got a lot of depth at that guard spot with Basantis getting some looks. But all of a sudden, man, the quiet battle that's been going on has been at tackle in camp because Deuce has missed early, worked his way back in. Crownover might be the most improved guy on the team from spring till now. And Basantis, we've been talking about since the spring, a major impact guy. And Aki's got more workout. So all of a sudden, for the first time, I've been doing this in a while now where I feel really good about where they're at in terms of stockpiling some true tackle depth and quality and experience, and yet that those experienced guys are having to compete. It's a really good thing when you've got Dewberry, have a returning starter, having to compete. You've got Bryce Foster. If he hasn't been practicing much, you feel good about the guys that can go in for him. At right tackle, Fothery's banged up. Okay, he comes back. Now all of a sudden you're getting pushed by an improved guy in Crownover. And then at left tackle, where they really are excited about Trey Zune's long-term future, but then, hey, you better hold off. Right. And Trey came in here and talked about it. He's like, hey, we all know you're getting pushed every day and you can't have a bad day. So that position, I think this week on till Miami will kind of remain a little bit in flux. A lot of that, though, has to do with those two guys being banged up, missing work. But also, I'm telling you, I don't think they would feel bad at all if if you were obviously, like I said, Bryce Foster is as good a lineman as there is in the program on the field on Saturdays. But if they had to go to battle and it was like Crownover, Layden, Naboo, Dewberry, and Basantis even, I think they'd be fine with that. Now, I think, I'm more likely would be like Zune, Dewberry or Naboo, Foster, Layden, and maybe Crownover game one. It depends on where Deuce is at.
Right.
But, man, the point of me rambling through all that and all those different options is to put you in the mind of Steve Addazio and Jimbo Fisher. And that is, there ain't nothing wrong with what I just said, because that means you've got depth, you've got options, you've got flexibility. Like a guy like Fothery does not have to be rushed in if he's not ready. There's a lot to be excited about on the offensive line. My only concern would be with everything I just said is how long till they get a situated, set front five
unit. Yeah.
And I think by Auburn for sure, I kind of wish you didn't have that Miami one right in the middle there, but you go New Mexico, Miami, ULM, and I think there'll be a lot of figuring out these first 3 weeks. Obviously, with the priority to go out there and block everybody, 2 weeks from now in Miami.
So O-line, a lot of different options you can do. D-line.
Tight end.
Oh, tight end, excuse me, sorry.
Just tight end to me is pretty simple, and it's kind of like running back. I don't think it matters who goes out there and takes the first snap. I think that depends on, there might not be a tight end on the field in the first snap. There might be two. It just will depend on what Jimbo and Petrino are running. And that first play, I don't think it necessarily. You might go Max because he's the senior and the veteran,
right.
But I don't think it really matters. I think you're just going to see an awful lot of Max Wright, Jake Johnson, and Theo Melanostrom. I think those three are going to be early season the primary guys that you see at that tight end spot, and we'll see a lot of all three of them.
D-line, as I was trying to start, and then I realized that we didn't hit tight end. Kind of throw it the same kind of way, though. I mean, McKinley. He has so many different options there, though.
McKinley's been great. I think Rakes is one of the only guys right now that's banged up. It's nothing big, but it might. I don't know if he'll play Saturday. It's not, again, he'll be playing soon. Maybe I kind of expect we'll see him against Miami, but for Saturday, I think. McKinley. Let's just pretend there's a first snap. Is it McKinley, Shamar Turner, Fadil Diggs, and Overton or Shamar Stewart? That might be what if you just said, hey, they're coming out in a four-man front, down one. Maybe it's that. There's so much flexibility. I've heard that, there's groups out there where you kind of go Shamar Turner, McKinley, and Walt. And that's when you're going three-man. They've loved – I think they really like – and this encouraged me when someone was telling me this the other day. They really like Scylla and Eni White on third downs. And that excited me because we know how bad we've been talking, right?
Yeah.
Like they need that pass rush. And I think they really like Eni and Scylla and how they've developed in terms of coming off the edge. So, but DJ Hicks – Dindy had a monster scrimmage. Gabriel and Dindy in their second scrimmage just was destroying stuff, which is cool to say because I love that kid and the fact of what he's been through and he's finally healthy and more than that, he's understanding it and playing loose and not worried about the knee, not worried about thinking he's out there playing, and he's really starting to make some noise. So he can move in and out. Shamar Turner can move in and out.
Yeah.
DJ Hicks, true freshman's been impressive. He can move in and out. So again, experience meets versatility meets high-end talent and depth. You can't go wrong with anything they do there. And I didn't mention Albert Regis. I mean, look on the inside. You're going to go, let's say, McKinley and let's just say McKinley and Shamar Turner. But Rakes is, I think if on a normal Saturday, I think you'd probably go McKinley and Rakes with the ones there. But you go McKinley, Shamar Turner, there's Rakes, there's Regis, there's Nolan, there's Dindy, there's Samu. Hicks, again, can go inside, outside. It's like 7 deep inside of real talent. Samu will have an impact as a true freshman, by the way, too. When you get the chance to put him in there in short yardage or goal line, good luck moving that dude off the line of scrimmage, when you need a yard or two. I wish A&M could have had him last year in certain situations and games. But at end, and you talk about Shamar Stewart, you talk about LT Overton, Silla, Eni White. I mentioned, again, we don't talk enough about Fadil Diggs, but you can also, Shamar Turner can start it in like he did against LSU last year. You can go, again, I mentioned Dindy. There's Hicks, obviously. There's so much up front. This better be a dominant defensive line from day one this year, and they will be. I'm fully convinced they will be when you sit here and talk about what that depth chart might look like.
This week on the show, I watched the Florida documentary, and there's so many parallels that I was making with A&M as I'm watching it.
I don't know where we're going with this.
Not with Aaron Hernandez, no, but just the amount when the 5 stars started coming on the D line, it made all the difference in the world,
really?
Right?
I haven't watched it yet.
And Steve Adazio is all over it. So there's
I only watch Netflix documentaries that I'm in.
Well, I guess I'll be the only one. All right, linebacker. Let's get into linebacker because that's been an area of concern, but I also think. I feel a little area of optimism recently.
I still wish they had more numbers. We just talked about numbers. It's not just the D-line's obvious, but at receiver, on the D-line, on the offensive line, tight end, they even withstood an injury. I do not feel that way at linebacker, so that's a concern. But look, Torian York, I think it was someone in his family, maybe his mom or somebody, which Dolores would have done if I was ever good enough to, play college football. My mom would have done the same thing, still would. But to post, she said that, he had earned a starting spot, which he has. Now, you got to finish this week strong. You see that a lot with freshmen. And, I remember when Kenny Hill was going to start against Rice when Johnny was suspended for that game and then kind of just melted down the week of the early in the week of that Rice game, and they went with Matt Jokel. I don't expect that with Torian York. He's been so mature beyond his years from the moment, really from the day he signed, but really the moment he stepped foot here. But I think you might be seeing a true freshman starting linebacker alongside Edgerrin Cooper. Coop's had a really good camp. Obviously, York has. He might not be the only true freshman you see early because Damian Sanford will probably get his way onto the field at least early on in the season and maybe early in game. But I think York and I think your next couple would be Russell and probably Montrell Harris.
Yeah.
Maybe J.D. Davis. That one would be. I don't know if the Russell J.D. Davis tandem. They're both kind of more thumpers and physical, downhill type of guys. So probably Martrell and Russell. Although I would say keep an eye on Damian Sanford as he gets his feet wet as well.
Yeah. Safety.
I think I think that one I'm pretty confident in saying. I think you go, Bryce Anderson at that nickel. Damani and Jordan Gilbert.
Yeah,
Jordan Gilbert's had a good camp. He had a good spring. His name started really popping up during the off season, and that carried over. And then your guys that you see if any of them rise up and start playing at a high level to push those guys, and they're going to get again chances early as Jared Kerr, Jacoby Matthews, and those are probably your top 5 and at that safety spot right now. And then you've got, options at true freshmen. By the way, speaking of safeties / linebackers, I think you'll see Sam Matthews probably. My guess is if there's a walk-on guy that he played, he was playing against Florida last year, which is what you're dressed like right now, by the way. People can't see your orange shorts, but I think you'll see I think Sam Matthews end up being your guy. I'm thinking of 12th man here. That would be my prediction, my pick there.
Okay. Cornerback.
Corner's the interesting one, isn't it?
It's some options.
You got options. Evan Stewart had some really nice things to say about the guys at the position, which carries a lot more weight than if I'm saying it. So it's been a position I've been worried, concerned about. I think of how fine a line recruiting is, and A&M's been recruiting at like this A++ elite level, both right now in 2021. 2022. 2021 was good too. This past class, they dipped a little. They're really excited about what they ended up getting, but the numbers were down, and they didn't have quite that success, obviously, when you go 5-7. But of all that recruiting and all these guys on the roster, and how much different does this whole conversation go, David, if I said they had Harold Perkins, Anthony Hill, pair of committed guys, and I'll even go one step further and say someone like, because Denver Harris didn't pan out, let's say you replace him with somebody that has from that, I would say like Terrence Brooks, son of Chet Brooks, right, who's down there in Austin wearing burnt orange right now and is a really good corner. But imagine like if he was in the discussion and those two linebackers, 3 guys in a 5-year stretch, and how much different does it sound? With that said, A&M still has as much talent as anybody that they'll play this year. Okay? Maybe it's the same as Bama, maybe it's the same as LSU. Anybody they play this year, A&M will have as much talent. Corner has been a concern of mine because Chappelle's really the only truly experienced guy at A&M that you bring back. But you bring back some guys with real experience, just in a different league in the ACC, in Josh DeBerry and Tony Grimes. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about DeBerry.
I have too. Yeah.
And true freshman, man, do not overlook Javon Thomas from South Oak Cliff, number 14. We've been talking about him. I was talking about him before camp, during the offseason. I was talking about him early in camp. You've got the bandwagon jumpers coming on. They're going full speed ahead with it. We've been talking about him for a while. From the offseason, he was here in the spring. He was banged up. Throughout the summer offseason, all of camp, if there's a second true freshman that relatively early in the season you could see starting on defense, in order for me, I might go York, then Javon Thomas, then DJ Hicks, just because DJ can play a lot without starting because that D-line's so crowded. But Javon Thomas is the one. He and York wouldn't have been at the top of my bingo card, when A&M signed that class. But yet here they are. So good for them. But again, that I think you'll see Chappelle's over there. I have heard that there's some situations where Chappelle will go like in more of a dime type corner. You've got Deuce Harmon, but I think as a season they're going to really watch how these guys play this week, because it's a big deal next week when you're going up against Van Dyke and a Shannon Dawson Miami offense, which is the Dana Holgerson tree, which is just slinging around, quick throws, read things quickly, come downhill, don't miss a tackle. So they're going to be watching real closely how these guys perform this week. It's almost going to be like we're going to see auditions on Saturday against the Lobos.
A week from today.
Oh, that's right.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Right. We only do it when they win. You're right.
That's the goal.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for coming in, Nuño.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Sunday, he's got soccer in Houston. He's got soccer in College Station.
All over the place.
Get to it. Close us out.
Thank you to Academy and Jacob.
A Loochador Podcast. Silver Lake Athletics. Silver Lake Triathlon. Did you hear about these people that did this Tough Mudder recently?
I heard about that, yeah.
And they caught all this hideous,
bacteria.
Yeah, they have these pus-infected blisters. That's what, you know why? Because when you're an adult, when you're grown, you don't have to be grown up. It's not a maturity thing. But when you're an adult, I think that's when you stop rolling around and playing in the mud.
And that's when you get old and crippled. Because you're not moving. You're not doing things.
You can do plenty without crawling through the mud and muck.
How else are you going to act
Splashing through the mud and the muck. What song is that?
I don't know.
Whoever guessed that when I just said it, that was
There's thousands of people watching. 5 people will get that.
absolutely not.
Nobody will?
No, everybody will. Her boyfriend Tommy, laying on the horn, splashing through the mud and the muck.
What song is that?
Dalton got it. Trisha Yearwood.
Oh.
She's in love with the boy. But she was singing about Tommy rolling around in his truck, not him crawling through the mud on his belly in a tough mudder through swamp.
I've done one.
Parasites,
2 years
whatever the
ago.
hell else they
It's
were
been
getting.
almost like 2 years.
That was a wild story, though.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I'll see you later. Bye.
he's Tough Mud and Nuño.
I'm MMA
Billy
Nuño now.
Loochador.
And Mr. Country Music.
That is true. That is true. Mr. Country Music.